Hello and welcome to AIL TV. This evening we are back again with David Otto from Stepped In, Stepped Out. We are back again talking about Cameroon, but this time it is really sad news, as most of you have heard what happened in the school. But of course, I don't want to waste much of your time. David Otto will be explaining. He's got two distinguished guests here. We are waiting for another one to come in. But yes, David, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Oteni. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to our viewers. Africans in London Television always has been providing us with this excellent platform to talk about security in Africa. So this is our weekly update. So we really appreciate again the viewers' contribution and the contributions of all our distinguished specialists that we invite on this platform. As Mr. Joseph said, today is a particularly disturbing day, in a psychological respect, because we want to talk about Cameroon, and the reason why we want to talk about Cameroon is because of a recent event. You see, naturally, talking about events, without understanding the global or the entire picture is a bit challenging, because things don't just happen in a vacuum. Things always happen, for a reason, and it could be a positive reason, it could be a negative reason. But this is one of the instances where, amongst many, that there seems to be no level of rationality, whichever way you look at it. But when there is war, when there is conflict, there is actually no sense in war. There is actually no rationality in war. So it's very touching when these kind of events happen. So again, this is about Cameroon, and in Cameroon there is an existing conflict, which is going on in the two majority English-speaking regions of Southwest and the Northwest regions. This conflict, it's all about the fight for independence, the clamoring for independence. For the past 4 years, it kicked off at the end of 2016, because the teachers union and the lawyers union, their demands for reform, within the education sector, their demands for reform within the legal framework, issues of marginalization, which have been talked about by different pro-independent groups, were ignored by the government. Some of the solutions that the government provided were cosmetic. Some of the tactics that the military and the police service used against the protesters were deplorable and hugely, a violation of human rights. There was brutality. And then it got to the point where it turned out to be an armed conflict. Now you have a situation where armed separatist groups calling themselves Ambazonia, of various sectors, of various areas within the two regions, have taken over the entire conflict, and the government, of course, is responding as well with brute force. So we have a war and a conflict that has been going on in this particular region for the past 4 years now. All kinds of atrocities have been committed. Government forces have, been guilty of terrible human rights abuse. Some of the separatist groups have been guilty of, despicable acts. So let's fast forward, because I'm sure most of our viewers would remember that what happened in this particular area we're going to talk about today. It's not the first time. We had the situation in Kumbo, which is in the west region. There was a village called Ngambu, where women and children were massacred. The Cameroon government, military, were found guilty of committing that act. Sanctions were taken by the government. And then we've now had a scenario where in this little town in the southwest region called Kumba, Fiango town, on the Saturday, I think this was the 24th of October, on a Saturday, these children were just in having their normal, trying to catch up, after schools have been shut down for 4 years. The separatists had agreed that, schools should resume because schools have not been operational in that region for the past 3-4 years. So it was agreed by the separatist groups that schools should resume, because of the need for children to continue schooling. But unfortunately, this incident is a demonstration of what I talk about, the trust between the population and between the government that has the legitimate responsibility to be able to protect students in school. So the unfaithful day of the 24th of October, which was a Saturday, saw unknown gunmen come into this this school, Saint I think it's Saint Catharina, secondary school, and massacred 7 children, 6 of them girls, 1 boy, very young children. They were killed in cold blood. Many of them escaped with gunshot wounds, and parents have been wailing. And the military and the government has put up a press release blaming this squarely on the hands of the separatists. Actually, I even saw one of the government statements which came out just today, saying that one of the separatist leaders who took part in the massacre, was killed by the security forces. On the side of the separatists, they've also blamed this squarely on the military, saying that they have no reason to carry out this massacre. So there's been this discussion of responsibility, and both sides continuously deny it. Now, of course, my experience, and I'm sure that when I talk to my guests, their experience would be that when these kind of massacres take place, because of the need for groups to win the hearts and minds of the local population, they would always deny it and say, "Oh, we don't know. We are not responsible for it." Especially when it's children, especially when it's women, when it's girls, when it's vulnerable people. Nobody wants to take responsibility for it. But at the same time, these kind of events are used by these groups, or sometimes maybe state actors, to pass on the message, either to discredit the group itself, or to expose to the international community that the movement is a terrorist movement. Separatist groups could also do it sometimes just to expose to the world that the government also is committing atrocities, because it's done that before. That the government does not have the capacity to protect children. It doesn't have the capacity to ensure that there is a governance structure within this region. So it has lost control of the territory, so to speak. So this is what we're going to discuss. But Cameroon is not the only country that we've seen this. We've seen it in Nigeria, with the Chibok girls, with Boko Haram, and so many other countries where children have been used by both state and non-state groups to pass strategic messages. So let me speak to my guest, because I think my guest would have a different angle, perhaps, to look at this. And here with me today, I brought in senior counterintelligence and security analyst Christopher Samuel, who's been talking about issues like this, understands the intelligence framework, understands the strategy of terrorist organizations and separatist movements, and how governments operate, how strategic messaging is passed over by way of committing. So I'll speak to Chris, about understand about his experience with these kind of issues. But before I speak to Chris, I would bring in Mr. Sali Nana, who is a certified anti-terrorism specialist, and one of regular guests as well, speakers who understands the terrain, and he's been following up on this crisis since the crisis began, and maybe before that. So, Mr. Sali, I'm sure that, like myself, like everyone else, first of all, we would always want to say that we express our deepest condolence to the families and those that have been wounded and killed, and we hope that there's going to be some kind of a thorough investigation to fish out that are behind this. Now, in your experience and what you've heard, um, do you think that this kind of a solution to this ongoing conflict, or this is a sign that the conflict has gotten to a point where something really needs to be done, before? What is your thought, Mr. Nana?
Thank you again for having me, David, and good evening to our viewers. And my condolences and sympathies to the families of the children that were killed in Kumba on Saturday. It's a very gruesome attack. I think that obviously, as you said, there needs to be a full investigation into what has happened. But I think that it is just an aspect of the conflict, and it goes, I mean, it is no surprise that this kind of thing happened, because we know that it has happened to a number of people in the last 4 to 5 years during this conflict. So people have been killed in various places within the Northwest and the Southwest region. Of course, there needs to be something needs to be done for the conflict to come to an end, but that something is what everybody is not sure what that will be. It's just one of those, I believe, is a cycle of conflicts whereby it goes up and down, and there are incidences like these which either give fuel or probably make many people reevaluate their support for one side or the other. I think that what happened in Kumba is just a kind of an awakening call to a lot of people who are involved on both sides of the conflict, because it was so gruesome that if you're supporting either side or any side that is accused of carrying out this kind of massacre, it becomes very difficult for you to support that kind of atrocity. So I think that it has kind of triggered protests from women across the region, with people raising their voices across the world. A number of international organizations have condemned it, and it draws attention to the conflict. But I think that such disasters soon get forgotten after a few weeks of media attention, and it moves on to another level. So I don't think that this is the end of the conflict.
Okay. Yes. Of course. You don't think this is the end of the conflict? I'm sure. Just to let the viewers know that we've had third expert who has joined us, Dr. Alicius Mbako. We want to welcome him. He had some issues with his connection. Dr. Mbako, welcome to the program. We're talking about the crisis that is going in Cameroon, and the event that took place in Kumba. So we'll get to you, Dr. Mbako, immediately. Let me get to Chris. Chris, I mean, you've had an experience, out of. I'm sure that I remember one time that we went to northern Nigeria, and we were looking at the issues of the Chibok girls, and the one of the key things that turned the Boko Haram crisis, that internationalized it, that drew the sympathy of the world, was the kidnapping of the Chibok girls in 2014. The famous "Bring Back Our Girls." Now, and the reason why that was the case, because these were young girls who were in school. Now, you've heard about the situation that is happening that happened in Kumba. Why do you think the government would deny this, and why do you think the separatists would also deny this? Is this because of the hearts and minds? And who would you think that could have been behind this, and what would have been the rationale? From your experience.
Okay, and thank Mr. Day. Thanks for having me again. Yeah, there are two ways to look at the current event in Cameroon. I want to look at it from two different perspectives. With the Chibok girls, we know that maybe terrorist group, they thrive like maybe negative media. So kidnapping the Chibok girls serve that particular purpose for them. They're able to like maybe generate international media attention to their cause. But with the of these innocent girls and boys in Cameroon, I doubt it very much if we can apply the same concept to like maybe the Ambazonia. The Ambazonia they are not a terrorist group. They are a group, they are like maybe seeking self-determination. And then having studied the issue of self-determination for a while, I've not really come across whereby, a group that is seeking to like maybe achieve one sort of maybe self-determination or autonomy, have killed innocent children in school just to be able to get like maybe international media attention to their cause. My view is it will serve it will serve the negative effect. It will serve the reverse effect for their cause. In the sense that if you are seeking self-determination, you want the support of the international community, but killing innocent children will not give you that support. It will even infuriate the international community. You will not get the support that you so seek. So my idea is that proper investigation needs to be launched, and I look more at the government role in this thing needs to be properly investigated. Because the reason why I said it needs to be the government in this case, they cannot be the judge and jury and then be the one that will investigate this particular crime. Maybe a third party needs to come in to actually investigate what has happened. Our Bazonia group, they are only engaged in negotiation with the government. So I don't know why like maybe going into school and then killing innocent children, what strategic benefit it will start for them. But you mentioned something in the way you open the program. It will serve a particular objective for them to like maybe highlight that maybe this government has failed and is inept, then maybe killing this the innocent children in school will serve that particular purpose. But they have to be also careful that what they don't want to do is for the group to be labeled as a terrorist group, because I believe that the people behind this, if it's not the Amazonia, then the people behind it are heading towards that path or maybe labeling the group as a terrorist group. So both sides need to be very, very careful. And I think like maybe the independent third party need to come in and investigate what has taken place.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Chris, on the point that you're making. So now, when you have separatist groups that are not organized, you know what? I mean, you understand that structure in separatist movement is very important. So you need to have a, of course, the argument is always that the more organized a group is easy for the government to then round up the leaders, and then once the leaders are rounded up, the group becomes crippled. So sometimes you can see the reason why, even though it may not be the reason why you've got separate different entities or different groups claiming different territories. Now, but if you have a scenario where you have small groups here and there fighting for the same thing, not being united, not having a platform, so how can one really think that maybe another group that perhaps just wants to show that it can have control of a particular territory, not be involved in this? Because the argument is, because the Amazonians are not organized, they don't have a centralized structure, it's difficult for them to claim that it's not them, because they don't have control either. I mean, what do you think of that?
Well, I mean, there are two ways of looking at it. I mean, the sector of the Amazonia that are already engaging with the government. So my take is that
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, what strategic objective will it serve for them to do that kind of thing at this point? Unless the whole agenda of like maybe self-determination has been abandoned, and then the group has shifted focus to something else. But if that hasn't been the case, then I don't understand what strategic objective that will start for them killing innocent children and boys, girls and boys in schools at this particular point in time. I mean, I've looked at the different groups that like maybe go on the path of self-determination. I've not seen them like maybe deploy that kind of maybe tactics to like maybe gain the international focus to their cause. I look at ITA, the Spanish separatist group, or even let's say maybe the Biafra movement in Nigeria, in the southeast of Nigeria. They have not, deployed the same tactics or so. So I do not really understand at this point what strategic objective, by killing the student, what it will serve for the Amazonia cause.
Yeah. So, Mr. Sali, on that, Chris, like many others, is saying that it may not serve, it doesn't serve, and it shouldn't serve the any positive objective for the Amazonian separatists to kill these children. I mean, there's also the argument that it doesn't serve the government's interest. But if you look at it from where the government is saying that these are terrorists, they are responsible for this, do you think this serves the interest of the government? I don't think any killing children will, but from a strategic point, what do you think?
Is it that to make Dave?
Mr. Sali, Mr. Sali.
From a strategic point of view, I don't think this will serve the government, because the government has deployed a lot of efforts to get schools restarted. Also the separatists, also sections of the separatists have promoted schools reopening, and also, but there are sections of the separatists that want to impose Amazonia schools, which they call community schools. And they have also had tensions with various private schools that need to pay them ransoms to operate. And these tensions have been going on in Kumbu, for example, with the Catholic schools there. So therefore, there are people within Amazonia. Is not a homogeneous movement. So within that area in Fiango and in Kumba area, there are different factions of Ambazonia. So there might be factions serving under a certain leader that might want to impose themselves on this school. Also, this school is a bilingual school. One of the conditions that the separatists have imposed is that the schools must not teach French, and that they must not also hoist the national anthem. And this school is supposed to be a bilingual school, and it's also in a quarter called Bamileke Quarter, which is largely people with a Francophone background. So they could have misled, but also there was intelligence that they had another 3 schools that morning, or surveyed 3 schools, including Kaskumba, and found out that there was military in the other schools. And so they didn't go there. I think that it is in nobody's interest to kill these children. But in terms of Ambazonia imposing fear, which they have done, and looking at what they have done before, there have been cases of maimed children when they were trying to blockade the schools. In the process of what they call the Gari process, there have been children in the southwest and in the northwest whose arms have been chopped off, whose fingers have been chopped off, and in the case of some children, their hands have been chopped off. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure that we can say because somebody has an objective of self-determination, then we can only judge them by that. No, we only judge them by their actions. And as somebody who has lost several relatives to Ambazonia militias, I know exactly that they can actually kill people, and they do kill people. So, and the military does them as well. I had a brother who spent 1 year in hospital and had 3 operations, having been shot by the military on both legs. So I do not think that any of these sides can actually be, you can stand for any of these sides. But I think that the Ambazonia movement is not a homogeneous movement. There are at least 30 different armed groups. There are so many leaders.
Yeah.
And also there is self-governing. Some of these groups just do their own things off their own backs, not necessarily following any command system. So therefore, a small group of Ambazonians can go away and take out an action, like the case of Ayafo Florence, who was killed in Pinin by Ambazonia separatists. It was a horrific killing on video. And initially, they presented, a faction of Ambazonia presented some militias and said, we arrested them. And later on, one of the leaders said, no, that was not the case. It wasn't really, it was just made up. And then 6 people have been arrested since then as having killed Florence Ayafo. So I think looking at the record, it is possible that a group may not be under a command of Sakoi Kome, or I don't know, Cho Ayaba or Akwanga or whoever, but it is very possible for any group to go out and carry out action. There are also so many spokespeople, and some of the spokespeople don't follow any authority. They don't follow any strategic. They just come online and they issue an order without actually following the faction under which they are, or actually having some structure or discussing it. The orders are just on Facebook, and some of the audios that I've heard point to the fact that this is possible, that they could do this in order to the factions that don't want schools to reopen to instill. So it's possible, but I think that we need to wait and see within the next 1 or 2 weeks whether there's an investigation and what comes out of it, and also what the parents, after they have grieved, after the grieving process, what the people of that neighborhood and the parents can actually actually said and know about the incident.
Yeah. Okay. Let me come to Dr. Aloysius. Thank you again for connecting. I'm sure you can hear me. Doctor, I have condemned these killings. You've condemned it. Many more people have done the same. The United Nations, the government of Cameroon, the separatist groups, they've condemned it. Everybody has condemned it because of the nature of the killings. It's the same that happened when they killed Florence. Therefore, everybody condemned it. The Gambu massacre, everyone condemned it. It's been happening. So condemnation doesn't work. It's a reaction that we all have to do, but it doesn't have any impact. Whether you're the UN or you are the person in the street. You can march in the street, as you like. It doesn't have an impact. If you don't do the right thing. Now, this is where we are. But how did we get here? At this point where things are just condemning and then we move on.
Thank you for having me on. Sorry for the technology problems. First of all, I wish to express my sincere condolence to the families that have lost loved ones in this particular incident. I hope that they will recover from this as soon as possible. Looking back, I think that the problem is, as we say, if you're dealing with, and many people are saying it from other parts of, even from the among the people from the French-speaking Cameroon, that you have to learn to first solve the root causes of the problem, because it's going to recur again and again, and it's not very easy, but we have to focus on something that is going to be long-standing, to solve this problem. Otherwise, it will keep coming again. I think in some ways the government is playing a significant role in trying to bring about some autonomy, and if this autonomy comes in, although it's not the full package of what both the federalists, or most of the former Southern Cameroonians would want, which is mainly to stop any activities that look like they are being undermined, that they are marginalized, or as we were trying to assimilate them, then, and give them a certain level of autonomy. Then that will be something that will probably reassure the people. I would like to remark that the army, in the past few weeks, I've been watching them. I've seen a lot of videos, and they are doing what I would expect will bring some resolution in the way in the very near future. They are using a very soft diplomacy and charm, which in fact is very important in winning. As I said before, it's winning. This is an asymmetric war, and it's a war where you have to win hearts and minds. And I am quite happy with the moves that the intervention forces have been doing, even right into the heartland of Ambazonia, to the extent that they are welcomed. They've helped to revive the school, and everything is going on quite well. I think that is the right direction. I've heard a lot of people make calls on reinforcing the military action in southern Cameroon. So I don't think that that is the right thing to do, because each time, as the military try to explain, because this is one of the things the military has tried to do again, that is, they try to explain how they carry out, how they plan an operation, and how they carry out the activity. And in the pre-planning, they really talk about casualties, some of which may be collateral damage, and how they try to avoid that. Now, when you explain to civilians, you go to this extent to explain to civilians, I think they kind of appreciate the difficulties of the military and where mistakes can be made. One of the other things I would like to say is that in the military is not completely perfect, in the sense that there are elements in the military that may be doing things that are not supposed to be done. Probably we should come out and denounce this type of actions. I take an example of the killings in the soccer and a few other things that happen. But so this trend, which will lead, so both from the military point and the political point of view, I think if they continue after these elections, we are going to see what is going to happen. If only comes to the people and other activities of rebuild infrastructure and so on, and reassure people come back, I think that will be the way forward, you know. We've also seen that there are a lot of us, as the Minister of Education said, there have been a lot of students who have left Douala and the Yaoundé to come back to the southern Cameroon, so sorry, to the northwest and the southwest regions. My contention is, if I look at it from what happened here, I would think that we have to weigh who benefits from this action. You know, we've seen that if you take these activities I'm just relating to at the moment, you see that the government is showing that they are winning the minds and hearts, and they are being in charge. So I strongly, in my analysis, I strongly believe, and from what some of the Amazonian people were saying, that they don't want schools to return. And given the fact that, as Dr. Nana pointed out, they are not under a single command and so on, you know, it's possible that this, for me, the most probable winner who wants to choose that they are, you know, they are still around and they are not happy, would be the Amazonians. And we can see that from the diplomatic point of view, they are losing ground, you know, and it's going to be embarrassing and annoying for them if they don't do something that will make the international community and those on ground zero to be aware that they are still in charge. That's
a good point that you've made there. Now let me come to you, Chris, because you know the point that Dr. Alicius makes is a very strategic point. When the military and the government engage in an asymmetric warfare of this nature, of course, this is, you know, as Dr. Mbako said, and you and I have talked about this before, this is about winning the hearts and minds of the local population. Now, when the military believes that it is winning in the battlefield, how difficult is it to then talk about a negotiation? Because, you know, as you know, nobody wants to negotiate when they're strong. So is it a danger of the military believing that we can win this in the battlefield and then, you know, intensify activities, and then, you know, the war just drags on, like, you know, as you said, the Tamil Tigers dragged on for 30 years, because each time, you know, from my experience, the military thinks we're going to win it next year, and then, you know, it drags on. What's your thinking on that, Chris?
My thinking is, if the military actually believe that they are winning the other mind, you know, and winning the narrative, then it makes a strategic sense for them to not to actually label the group as a group that is seeking like maybe legitimate self-determination or viable autonomy. You know, at this point in time, if they actually believe that they are winning the war, it makes sense for them to like maybe label the group as a terrorist group. You know, so if killing these children, it might serve that specific purpose for the government, you know, to attack the credibility of the group and attack them and label them as a terrorist group, as a disjointed group, rather than as a group that is seeking a viable, legitimate self-determination cause.
Yeah, yes, you know, yeah, from that perspective, so it's a strategic, you know, a communication methodology that, okay, you know, if as long as the Amazonians are seen by the population as a terrorist organization, then it further, you know, diminishes the credibility that the people have. Now, is that the same narrative that you're saying, or you're looking at it from the point of this is what the Amazonians have done in the past? Of course, you mentioned that the military has also done so in the past. So is it now about a matter of each one trying to tarnish the reputation of the other? Is that what you see at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think I agree with the colonel that there's a change of strategy by the military. They have been going to people and trying to, deliver social services to people, relief aid, school materials, and there have been more collaboration between the population and the military, which didn't exist in 2018 at all. 2017, there was no such thing. People were completely, against the military at the time. So they have done a lot of winning hearts and minds. So I don't really think that it is in their best interest to carry out an action that will destroy that work that they have done. The other thing I want to say is that I think that there is a need to understand how these groups are and who are these groups locally. So these boys are known by the laws. So in each place, they have a policy called county by county, which is basically tribe by tribe and sometimes clan by clan. So when you go to a place like Fiango or Kumba, people actually know who the Amba boys are. It's not like some foreigners that have come from Yaoundé or from out of the area. Every Amba group in Cameroon is a local group. It's made up of who are well known to the locals. So that's a factor that sometimes if we analyze without actually knowing exactly how these groups are made up, then we can think that there might not be notice or people don't know who does what. There are anecdotal evidences that the father of one of the child that was killed saw the people that were going and had an interaction with them. And also there is an evidence that the head teacher or the principal had dealings and negotiations with some parties, but they may be doing this off their own backs without the backing. I think this particular incident could be one of those incidences where action carries out an action without the rest of them actually being aware.
Yeah.
And which results to a serious embarrassment. I don't really think that it is in the military to escalate killings of children at this time, meetings of the groups. I also don't know the Amazonian, if they were to reason, let's say within the interim government, or even within the Julius Ayuktabe faction, that they will come up with such a strategy in a formal way. So, but groups are functioning autonomously and not listening to any autonomous or any leadership or command. So I think that it's possible that a group, a renegade group, decided to do this, and from anecdotal evidence, audios, confessions, and things like that, highly unlikely that is the military. Although there has been a lot of other videos and audios pointing to the military, I don't think that they are credible. For example, a serving Cameroonian security officer in uniform cannot actually make an audio at government. It's impossible. They have to have deserted and abroad or somewhere else to make that kind of statement. Even a civil servant can't make that kind of. So some of the videos are not really credible from the separatist end.
Yeah, that's a good point you're making. You know, and if we want to look at these points from a critical analysis, you know, you've mentioned very well that there are so many groups that do not take command from, you know, whether it's any of the leaders abroad or, you know, even the leaders on the ground. And that, you know, these renegade groups, you know, can easily operate on their own. Now, first of all, it would be difficult for the military itself to directly carry out this kind of a massacre, and I don't think the military would do that. Now, but because you have these renegade groups that operate, isn't it possible that some way by proxy, you know, this could happen, whereby, you know, somebody can pay a group and say, carry out this attack, you know, and then that tarnishes the reputation of the entire movement, rather than saying that, you know, the military goes and carries out the attack itself directly, you know, because therefore it's like the Ambazonians, or, you know, a group that is related to is affiliated to Ambazonia that carries out the attack, and the military then benefits from, or the government benefits from that narrative. I mean, we've seen this in many instances, but, you know, isn't there a possibility of, you know, having that kind of collusion?
Yeah.
Dr. Nana,
Is it me? Sorry.
yes.
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 I don't think that scenario is possible, because if you know the modus operandi of the Cameroon regime, the Cameroon regime is a command system inherited from the French, and it is very difficult for military people or people in uniform altogether to have certain level of autonomy in operation, including budgets. So it's highly unlikely that somebody, because there is always a clearance from the hierarchy. When you go to even do small processes, when I was last in Cameroon and I went to some of the ministries just to invite people to a workshop that I was organizing in Yaoundé, a head of service or an official in the ministry or anybody that you talk to you need to write an application to the minister to clear that for them to attend a workshop. And so I think that for the military to organize such an operation whereby they hire people to kill children, I think they can do that, to hire someone to kill a militia fighter, a combatant. But to do that for a school and for children, I don't think that Amber group, especially that Amber group that operates in Malende and also the suspected Ambers, the Amber that actually operate within that area and Lebialem, I don't think they can actually talk to the military or to the administration. They mostly focus on business side of things. So cocoa farmers, the muketes and all this kind of thing, the rubber plantations, that is where they get their, from these traders, that's where they get their money. So I don't really think that they can be saving us. And also, it's very dangerous within AMBA, within the groups, if you are seen to be a sellout. If you were to deal with what they call a republic, it's very risky. And because the groups are very small and most of the time they are relatives, sometimes you can find 10 people who are related in one AMBA group. I did, as you remember, in 2019, I did a presentation in a university in Germany about these groups, and I had a detailed look, and I had people to actually look at the nature of these groups. Who are these people in these groups? What kind of relationships do they have? Some of them are really relatives and brothers, so it's very difficult to penetrate them and bribe. That's why even if they wanted to go to the DDR, it's a big issue, because if you are caught trying to do that, then I think your life is finished. So
yeah.
They are very small groups, and they control themselves in the sense that to go and take bribes is, unless you wanted to go and take it from civilians and come and share, it would be very difficult to deal with the administration and the media. I mean, and the military. So I don't think that thesis will work. But we wait and see what happens in the next 2 weeks. We cannot dismiss any possibility.
So yes, Dr. Mbako, we cannot dismiss possibility. Each party is pointing at the other. Obviously, what happens next, because this has happened before. It's happened now. It could be me tomorrow. It could be you. It could be your children, my children, or anybody's children tomorrow. Everybody is condemning. I'm condemning. You're condemning. What happens next? Is it time for the people to take control? And when I say the people, the government says that Cameroon is one and indivisible, and therefore it means that what is happening in the northwest and southwest regions concerns the entire country. Now, is it time for the entire country to come together and rise and compel this government to come to a solution that deals with the underlying crisis, the underlying factors, that deals with the injustices, the discrimination, the marginalization? Is it the right time to do that now, Dr. Mbako, or do you think the military is contented that they can win this in the battlefield?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think that the military can be contented, because the military is being used as an instrument of containing, but this is a political problem. It's not a military problem. And the issues have been political, although they have been presented initially in 2016 as related to other aspects like education and the law, also the judiciary and so on. But these are political issues that have been grumbling for quite a long time, and that they held the all Anglophone conferences outlined the issues quite well to the government. The government ignored. So I think this is a political. The solution here is a political solution, and it involves two groups of people. I should say three actually, but the government has given more priority to the extremists, because it waits till the extremists act before it acts. So in that sense, the government has always given the extremists a long line to draw, because I was, as an anecdote, I was telling one of the prime ministers who I called to congratulate, and he said, "Oh, we are doing fine." And I said, "But do you know that is the SCNC, which is the group that was originally set up as the secessionist group, that is making you have this. Because each time they react, that is when the government does something for the Anglophones, you know. Yeah, so so it's it's very difficult to deal with. You have a problem. It's there. The solution is there. Everybody knows what the solution should be, but you have to use the bad guy who is extremist, who says, "Look, I don't want this anymore," before any action is taken. Now, if the government changes this narrative, you know, this paradigm, and starts now acting on the problems that have been, which all of us know, as I am a federalist, and we know that there's a problem of autonomy. That is a problem. If that is sorted, that will be something very welcome, and you know. But to get there, to get the peace now, they've given so much opportunity to the extremists, that the extremists have become very powerful, and therefore are going to be the bargaining chip. So I think that there must be a dialogue. There should be a dialogue, an inclusive dialogue, to bring these things to a proper end, and stop the crisis.
And when you say dialogue, what do you mean? You mean a dialogue that both sides should sit on the table and talk, but then it's going to be talk about what? Is it a dialogue to talk about separation, or the possibility of separation? You know, or is it a dialogue to talk about a federal system? I mean, just 1 minute so that I can get to the other guest. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the dialogue. This is where it becomes tricky, because. But already the dialogue should be to talk about issues of solving issues about the Anglophone demands. That is what it should be, and that
the Grand National Dialogue talked about that. Go ahead, Mr. Mbako.
No, the Grand National Dialogue is thought by many people, even on the other side, to have been selective, and are having discussed issues and giving solutions before even. I mean, I think this should be a more inclusive dialogue, and possibly because the other side cannot be present, I think that it would be proper to suggest that the dialogue should be, part of the dialogue should be outside Cameroon, you know, not necessarily in Europe, but probably somewhere in Africa, and involving other partners, other countries.
Yeah, Chris. Let me get to you, and I'll give you about 1 or 2 minutes as well, so that I can speak to Sali to conclude things. We've talked about negotiations. You know, when the government begins to say that these guys are terrorists, you know, is that, in your opinion, a way of saying we are not talking to terrorists?
Thank you, Dave. That brings the negotiation to an end. You know, because I mean, the policy of the international community that want to maybe get involved in the engagement and dialogue with the separatist group. You know, once they've been labeled as a terrorist group, then it becomes so difficult for any outsider to want to come and sit down and dialogue with them. You know, at the end of the day, they say poverty is the parent of crimes and revolutions. So if the government don't do what they're supposed to do, then you're going to be, you know, the agitation will still be there. The separatist movement will not go away, whether they're labeled as a terrorist group or not. You know, so the bulk of the things that needs to be done is that maybe, you know, the government will need to maybe look within themselves, and knowing that maybe from now on it's not longer going to be it's not going to be a business as usual. You know, outreach. Yeah, and outreach be maybe sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Chris. You're right. You know, there's got to be an outreach, which an outlet that needs to give an opportunity to have these conversations. Otherwise, as you rightly said, once you label them as a terrorist movement, then nobody wants to deal with them. The international community sees them as tainted. Now, Sali, just to conclude with you, um, these massacres happened like others, and both sides are blaming each other, and of course, it's always the case. Nobody's going to take that responsibility. Now, what is the end game? Is it that the government should continue fighting, or do you think the people should rise and call the government to do something about this crisis? And who is supposed to do that?
Um, I don't think that the government has any tap that they can switch off any conflict. If that was the case, we will not have Boko Haram. We will not have conflict in Central African Republic, Libya, DRC, all these conflicts that are going on. There are conflicts in 48 out of 54 African countries. Once a conflict starts, there is no tap to switch it off. So the government cannot actually stop this instantly. And what I think is that this will go away after a few weeks. Remember that in the first 8 weeks of 2020, 164 people were killed, black people, unarmed black people were killed by the American police in the first 8 months of this year. And remember that there are always mass shootings in America, even though there's no war. And there is always an outcry and outrage. Like in February this year, there were 17 children killed in a school in America. There's no war there. Even if you solve the problems in Cameroon, there can still be mass shootings. So I think this will carry on.
Thank you for that. And on that note, I hope that it doesn't carry on for too long. I hope that the crisis can be resolved, and something can be done. I really want to appreciate my guest, Mr. Sali Nana, an anti-terrorism specialist, Christopher Samuel, an intelligence analyst, and Dr. Alicius Mbako, who is a former colonel from the Cameroon Army. I appreciate your insights and your views. Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Otieno, and we really want to appreciate Africans in London television. But above all, we really thank our guest for pushing up all these questions that we've put together to our specialist. We see you again, same time next week, talking about Africa Security Update. Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David Otto, and thank you very much to all our guests. Yes, you guys, what you have been discussing here, it is something that it is always on my mind. I don't understand why Africa today, we are still in that situation. Whether you look in Cameroon, you look in Somali, you look in even areas that we don't suspect, because some of it is not actually used. But my question would be, you guys as a specialist and expert in these matters, I would just request one thing. Maybe you could actually now pressurize the role of the UN. No, not UN, sorry, the African Union. I would like really to see, maybe next time you might organize a show that will talk about the role of African Union, because it is there to help. Or ECOWAS, what is it exactly doing? It is really sad just to see a group of people going into a building and killing children, even if they didn't kill children, even just destroy the school. That is not going to help. So that is my take on that. And thank you very much for all our viewers. But I'm always saying that this conversation carries on. It's on Facebook, on all social media platforms. So thank you again. Until Thursday, ciao.